So, Richard, at the beginning, I mentioned blood lions.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a very interesting quote from Blood Lions, which I would like to quickly read. It says, so the film begins, and then at the beginning, there's the quote, which says, until such a time as the voice of the lion is heard, history will be written to glorify the hunter. And I thought this was very, very appropriate, and especially for this book as well. This is very appropriate. But I want to talk about the government and government responsibility. So you interviewed, so as part of this book, in this book, there's an interview that you did with Ian Mishler. And so Ian Mishler is the main protagonist from the film documentary Blood Lions. And so on page 60, you ask him, I guess that breeders would claim to be creating jobs. What's the reality of how beneficial these facilities are to the economy? And so he says, not beneficial at all. They are actually taking away jobs. Some of these places have up to 20 or 30 volunteers working on their facilities. That property owner is using these volunteers to do menial work on his property, and they are paying him to do it. So he avoids having to pay locals and gets paid by people mostly from overseas. It is fraudulent. Why does our government not see that jobs are being taken and stop its support of the breeding industry? It's illogical. We must start asking to what degree corruption might be involved. We need to know who in power and politics is actually involved in the lion breeding industry. So again, this is a very chilling account. And so my question is, to your knowledge, to what extent is our government complicit in the lion breeding industry, knowingly or ignorantly?
I mean, I don't think complicit is the correct word, just because it is a perfectly legal industry at the moment. So, you know, there's nothing from a corruption point of view, if you like, to be complicit in, because it's perfectly legal. The question comes, why is a government still allowing it? Because on various levels, it should stop. Economically, it's probably, if you did a balance sheet, it's probably taking money away from the South African economy rather than creating money for the South African economy. So there's that aspect. I mean, I believe in the whole of the breeding industry, petting industry, tourism, derivatives, etc. There's about a maximum of about 600 jobs involved. Now, you know, that is a tiny amount of jobs. And a lot of these facilities could actually become tourism attractions without having to handle animals. So you know, so why is the government allowing it from a point of view of it doing brand South Africa harm? Because all over the world now, people are saying, why does South African government allow this? What's going on? And this is so that's one aspect. Then there's the sort of moral aspect. Should we really, in 2021, be breeding captive animals like this and effectively farming them? Since I've written that book, lions have actually been reclassified now as farm animals.
Oh.
So here, how about this? A lion and a cow are now the same.
Wow. In South Africa?
Yeah. So you have to say to yourself, why? And I think that may be what someone like people like Ian Mishler are saying, you know, that there must be some benefit to some people somewhere, because it's almost illogical to allow this to continue, because the amount of people financially benefiting are very, very small compared to the whole population of South Africa. And they're benefiting an awful lot, a very small number of people. Why? So the suspicion of people like Mishler and many others is that they may have government connections. Let's just put it that way.
Yes. Well, I suppose that's the only explanation, because in terms of legislation, if the government were to ban lion hunting, then, or ban many of these facilities, then that would go a long way. But if the government allows it in terms of legislation, as you say, it's perfectly legal to do this. It's immoral, but it's legal.
You see, there's another point. I mean, okay, so you're a lion. Let's call it farming. You're a lion farmer, just as you might be a beef farmer or a chicken farmer or a sheep farmer or something, all right? So lions are your stock. Now, if a government comes along and says, okay, we're going to make this completely illegal, they have devalued your stock tomorrow. They've killed your living tomorrow. So on Tuesday, you were legal. The law gets passed on Wednesday and suddenly it's illegal. To be fair to the government, I think one of the things that inhibits them is that they would get massive court cases from the people who they had gone from making legal one day to illegal the other day,
yes,
and devalued their stock. I believe there are many ways to deal with this. I don't think that should be enough to stop it. But I can see a reluctance to take on loads and loads and loads of court cases and lots of lion farmers, giving them huge bills, saying, you've devalued my stock, you've killed my living, you've killed the value of my farm. Now I want X million rand as compensation, hundreds of rand probably. So I think that's another reason why the government is reluctant to act.
Well, that's scary. That's so it means that this is in a deadlock. It's not going away anytime soon. So
well, it's very interesting you should say that, because it could go away soon. For example, we all know that the coronavirus came from the animal world.
Yes.
We don't know the exact route. But lions are one group of animals which, if they're going off to the Far East and pretending they're tigers, they're ending up in wine and they're ending up in blocks of tiger cake, which is being eaten, then transmission to humans of animal diseases could be happening. Now, if you imagine, there are two ways to stop this. You either stop it at the source, which is the breeding end, or you stop it at the consumer end. We were all very hopeful that one of the outcomes of coronavirus would be that the Chinese and other Southeast Asian markets would completely stop trading and consumption of wild animals. If they did that, that kills lion farming stone dead, because the market disappears. So I don't think it's hopeless. I think on many levels, we will eventually stop this.
Can lion meat be eaten? Is it ever used for food?
Yes, it's not that common. There used to be before the current crisis. There were specialist restaurants in the United States sell lion meat, but the main lion consumption is bones which are boiled up and end up in lion cake. End up in tiger cake.
Yes.
Because they're pretending they're tigers, and tiger wine in the Far East. So in that sense, lions are being consumed by humans.
Oh, wow. That's quite scary. But well, maybe another solution is that people stop going to the petting facilities.
Absolutely.
Now that they'll know that the cubs have been stolen from their parents. So they are entered into a world of slavery. And so by going to these facilities and playing with the lions and feeding them, you are promoting the lion breeding industry by doing that.
I think lots of people and lots of tour operators are being targeted by the NGOs and the campaigners. Please don't take people to cub petting. Please don't take people to lion walking facilities. So yeah, this is enough. There are many lines of attack. Lions? No, I'm sorry. There are many lines of attack. And there are many sort of avenues that we can go down to try and campaign to stop wildlife breeding and consumption. It's bigger than lions. It's lots of animals.
Yes, absolutely. And also, Richard, so you met Oliver and Obi, the two lions.
Yeah.
In fact, at the beginning of the book, you talk about when you met them. So you say in the introduction, this is on page 16. I have always believed that animals communicate in ways we don't understand, in languages we don't speak, but that some humans can inexplicably communicate with them. Nevertheless, when Catherine told me that she had spoken to the two lions, Oliver and Obi, and that they were waiting for me, I was slightly skeptical and wasn't quite sure what to expect. So Catherine is the one lady who partnered with Lisanne Cornwall to start a facility called Panthera Africa. So that's where they rescue lions, as well as other wild animals as well, from captivity. And then in a way, they give them a sanctuary. So Oliver and Obi were now kept in this facility by Catherine and Lisanne. And in the book, you detail how difficult it was for them to actually start this facility. Is it easy to get a license from the authorities to breed lions or to breed wildlife or to have an enclosure? Is it easy to get the license, the permission?
Well, provided you tick all the boxes,
Okay.
then yes, it is. And one of the complaints of the campaigners and the NSPCA, et cetera, is that there aren't enough boxes, they're not detailed enough, and the industry is not properly regulated. So on the one hand, I'd like to see it shut down, but on the other hand, given that it exists, at least one small step in the right direction would be to regulate it properly. Yes, it is pretty much easy. I mean, one of the things that happens as well, this happens particularly up in the Northwest province, is that lots of the breeding facilities are actually illegal. They're not even licensed. And we came to know this later on when I was making a film, because lions started being poached in these facilities. Because for a poacher, you know, the lion is sitting there, so just chuck some poisoned meat over the fence, kill the lion and go and chop its head and its feet off, and you've got the bits you want. And a lot of these poaching incidents were not being reported to the police because the facilities themselves were not licensed to do what they were doing. So you have that aspect as well. But if you've got time before we finish, I'll just, if you like, I'll tell you the story of Obi and Oliver when I met them.
Yes, please.
It was a very, very weird thing. I mean, I think of myself really as a bit of a realist and a bit of a pragmatist. So when Catherine said to me that day, you know, I've spoken to the lions and they're waiting for you, I thought, oh God, this woman's completely bonkers. She's mad. And I walked down this path, and it was quite interesting because Oliver jumped off the roof of his shelter where he was lying with Obi and came exactly to the fence where I was about to arrive, coming down this path. And then I turned right to go and find, I was carrying a little chair because I like to sit and get close to the animals if I can. So I wanted to sit for a couple of hours and just watch them and et cetera. He wandered up the fence the other side from me, and I found a bush with some shade, put my chair down, and he sat down and just stared at me and watched me. And it was very weird because he seemed to be kind of looking into me, through me, around me, you know, extraordinary eyes that animal's got. And I actually felt he was trying to communicate. Now, I began to wonder whether I was going just as mad as the woman who I'd just been thinking of as mad. But he was genuinely trying to communicate. Any dog owner will know that you can look at your dog and sometimes think that your dog is sort of talking to you silently. Yeah. That's the feeling I got with Oliver that day. And in the beginning, I almost felt threatened because although there's a fence between you, there is this huge predator only a few feet away. And you know, I couldn't help thinking that he thought I was a hamburger, even though there's a fence. But then I suddenly realized that the way he was looking at me was actually quite friendly in a weird kind of way, that it was a very friendly gaze. And then I must have dozed off because I suddenly woke up with a hornet or something hitting the side of my head. And that woke me up like that. And I looked at Oliver and I thought that bloody lion is laughing at me. So I swore at him for laughing at me. And he got up and turned his back and stalked away in disgust and then came back. And so next time Katrine tells me that she's talked to the lions, I believe her.
Yes.
I really believe that day that I was communicating in a funny way with that particular animal. And if I'm ever there, and I live quite near there when I'm in South Africa, I live in Hermanus, which is just close to there. Whenever I'm close by, I go and see him.
Yes.
because
Oh, wow.
he's an amazing animal, but they're all amazing, and they should not be in cages.
Face. Yeah. So they know what we do to them. They feel it.
But the other, you asked about emotions. There's a guy who lives now in Neisner, a guy called Gareth Patterson. Gareth has written several books, good books, are all available in South Africa. He learned from the people I was telling you about earlier, Born Free.
Mm.
He learned how to reintroduce lions to the wild.
Mm.
And George Addison was actually killed. And when he was killed, Gareth took George's lions and released them in Botswana. So he actually lived with lions for a while. He became like a human lion. And Gareth told me that if you live close to a pride of lions and observe them, you will see all the human emotions.
Mm.
If you're trying to sleep and you're a lion and your cubs decide to walk all over your face, you get annoyed. So you just like a human dad would say, "Hey, come on, leave me alone. I'm trying to watch a football match." So that they exhibit annoyance, they exhibit sadness, they'll exhibit anger. So all the emotions within a pride of lions, a lion family that humans show are present. So that's another thing that really I think we don't take into account.
Mm.
These animals are sentient. For all of your listeners, watchers, sentient means they have feelings.
Mm.
Animals do have feelings at various levels. And we're abusing those feelings by treating them the way we do.
Mm. Richard, you mentioned about releasing the lions who had been bred in captivity and releasing them into the wild. So on chapter 19, you give us a very thrilling yet emotional detail of one of the lions. So there's a couple called George and Hillary. This is on page 147. So it starts on page 147. Well, I'll read from page 147. But it starts at the beginning of chapter 19. And so so this is a lion. So let's see where I should start reading. So I'll just say, okay, the lion had been released onto a hunting farm north of Kuruman near the border with Botswana in South Africa's northwest province. He had been moved in 2 stages from a lion breeding farm in the Free State after someone in a foreign land had chosen his photo on the website on a hunting organization and bought the right to kill him. The couple had undertaken the long flight from America in a state of considerable excitement. At breakfast 2 weeks earlier, the man's wife had insisted he open an envelope. Inside was a card that said, "Happy birthday," 2 e-tickets for flights to Johannesburg, and some literature featuring photos of a lion. He smiled and shook his head while she watched him expectantly, saying, "Say something, darling. You have always wanted to do this, and now you'll have the chance." His wife had bought 2 air tickets to Africa and booked a hunt onto which her husband could shoot a lion. So my question is, can a lion or an animal that was bred in captivity, can it be released into the wild? Can it survive in the wild after having been bred in captivity?
The short answer is no. It has been done. It's been done by the man I mentioned, Gareth Patterson. It was done by the people who were featured in the book and film Born Free. But it's a very intensive effort. You've got to take the lion out to the wild. You've got to teach it to live wild. So it has to learn about catching and killing things and all these sorts of things. And Gareth, when he released his lions in Botswana, and the same with George Adams and Kenya, it was like a one-to-one tuition. They would take their lions out into the bush, and they would see a herd of gazelle or buck or something, and they would teach them how to stalk, teach them how to hunt, etc., etc., etc. This is not viable, and so they're not viable in the wild on several levels. First of all, many of them are genetically compromised because there's too much inbreeding going on in the lion breeding industry. So that's one threat, genetically compromised. Another threat is that if you take them out and stick them in the Kruger or stick them in Kalahari or somewhere, they've got wild lions around them. Now, how long are they going to last with the wild lions? There's a very good chance the wild lions will kill them. So that's another threat. Another threat is they haven't got the skills to survive in the wild, their own skills, the hunting skills, etc., etc. They've been bottle fed, for God's sake. They don't fear humans. They started off life being fed by a bottle. So they have to acquire those skills. So if you add up everything that they're facing as challenges to be able to exist successfully in the wild, they would have very, very, very small chance indeed. But the other thing we've got to say is that should we be releasing animals which are genetically compromised amongst a wild population? So if you were going to do that, you should actually make sure that they were genetically not compromised before you did it. So for most conservationists, I'd say for all serious conservationists, the answer is no. It's not viable to release these animals into the wild.
What should be done with them?
That's a real problem, because since I wrote that book, the population has just continued to go up, up, up. Nobody knows exactly how many captive bred lions there are in South Africa, but estimates go between 10 and 14, 15,000, which is an awful lot of lions. So if you make it illegal to breed them, what are you going to do? There's your question. What are you going to do? Let's take the lower figure, the easier figure, 10,000 lions. What do? Do you shoot them? Then there would be a global outcry. The whole world would throw its arms up in the air. Terrible, who's going to feed them? Going to feed them for years in captivity until they die naturally. So it is a really big problem that's been created by allowing this industry to get so big. I think the NSPCA answer would be that the facilities should all be gone into. The lions should be inspected. The ones which are healthy and viable should continue to be fed. Now, whether you do that with foreign NGOs and people like that helping to provide the money, I don't know. But and then the ones which are not viable, the ones that are in pain or can't be saved, then they should be euthanized. But it's a huge problem. And the problem is that when a law comes in banning this or something, the bomb explodes and the lions get blown up.
Just to clarify, how do you define canned hunting?
I've tried to define it in the book because, and I'm just wondering if I can very quickly find it, because it's very difficult. There is no legal definition as such, and various people define it in different ways. I'll do it in a second without, but if I can actually find it, it's just a sentence. And I've worked quite hard to try and define it. I don't think I'm going to find it easily. Here we are. I've got it. So what I write on page 117, 1, 2, 3, paragraph 4. In view of the varying definitions of canned hunting I encountered in my research and the absence of an official definition, and to achieve a level playing field, I have produced my own definition. So here's my definition. Canned hunting is the hunting of captive bred lions in a fenced or enclosed area, irrespective of any other considerations. Now, the reason I say that is that I'm saying it's irrespective of how big the enclosed area is, because some people may say, oh, it's not right to shoot them in a small area, they can't get away. Well, I don't care how big or small the area is. If it's got a fence, it's not right. You've got the mental fence and the physical fence. That's why I say irrespective of any other consequences. So that's what it's the shooting of a captive bred lion in an enclosed area.
All right. And then, Richard, beyond this book, are there any other related projects about the fight to help lions in South Africa that you can speak about? So maybe related to this book, are there any other projects?
Yeah, after finishing that book, I started on a film project, which was kind of, doing that book made me realize there were many, many questions I hadn't answered. It made me realize that there was a whole lot more to this. it made me realize that it was something that wasn't sort of stopped here. It was developing and changing the whole time, this whole industry. So I, with a couple of colleagues, we then started about 6 months after the book was published, we started making a film called Lions, Bones and Bullets. I can't say much about the film because it's just finished now. And we're just looking now at release and distribution, etc. But that could still be a little while away. But it's a genuine investigation into captive lion breeding. We have tried to give a fair, a fair evaluation of both sides of the argument. But that will be coming out later this year.
Yes. All right. Are there any other mammals? So we know that there are other mammals that are trafficked. Are there any other mammals that are critically endangered that you can talk to us about, that you can make us aware of? Aside from lions, you have written other books as well. What other mammal can you talk to us about?
The one which is particularly interesting to me right now is pangolins.
Yes.
I've got a book coming out in South Africa next month on World Pangolin Day.
Yes.
20th of February. There are 4 African species of pangolin, one common or one in South Africa, the others in Central Africa, West Africa, East Africa, and there are 4 Asian species. These mammals are the most trafficked mammals on the planet. And that's a frightening thing to think they are the most trafficked wild mammals on the planet. And they're trafficked because of the value of their scales. They're covered in scales, which is like rhino horn, it's keratin. And that it all ends up being used in medicinal uses in the Far East and China. But we're killing pangolins at an alarming rate, and we're sending them towards extinction. And what has happened is that in Southeast Asia, those 4 species are now so rare that that market is looking to Africa to provide the need, to fill the need. And so African pangolin are now being poached and killed at an alarming rate.
Which is amazing to me because the pangolin is such a secretive animal. I've never seen a pangolin in real life up close. And it's amazing to me that it's the most trafficked mammal in the world. Yet, if you were to ask people, have you ever seen a pangolin? They'll say, no, I've never seen it before. That's amazing to me.
Well, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in the bush all over Africa. I'd never seen one until I went to a rescue hospital in Joburg.
Yes.
And that's what I saw. But you know, Mdu, I talked about it being special to meet Oliver, and it was, the lion. There is something really weird about pangolins. They're kind of a magical creature. You know, when they look at you, that is beyond special. There's something kind of bewitching about the way they look at you. Quite extraordinary. But let's not forget as well that there is a high possibility that the pandemic we're all suffering from came to humans via pangolins. Because the scientific theory is that coronaviruses are mostly hosted by bats. And in this case, it may well have gone from bats to pangolins in the Chinese market and then been consumed by someone in China. And that's how it started in Wuhan. It's not scientifically proven yet, but that is the most scientific opinion is leading that way. So we're back to the trillion, zillion, billion dollar breakfast. You know, absolutely crazy in terms of what it's cost the world.
Wow. I look forward to talking to you about that book, about the pangolins.
That would be great. I would look forward to that.
I'm very excited about that. And I think a lot of people will be excited about that as well, especially because of what you've just mentioned, that we are now in this health crisis and the pointers are pointing towards the pangolin as the source of COVID-19. But we'll speak more about this when we speak about that particular book. So for now, Richard, I have to say thank you for being so generous with your time and your information about this particular book and this conversation with me.
It's been great to talk to you, and thank you for your time and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Cuddle Me, Kill Me by Richard Peirce. Thank you everyone for joining us.